Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remus.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson with you. Our boy Jer Remo filling in for one Michael Remus today as he enjoys holidays. And we've got a packed show today. We're going to kick it off with the Slat Man, Joey Slattery. For the first little bit, Drew Mandel of Illegal Curve is going to pop by. And we'll also have a visit from Murat and Brandon Rewucki. Should be a great show today. Lots to get to as we count down to Labor Day, do a little bit of off-season hockey talk, and get into what is up with the Toronto Blue Jays as they enjoy a day off before getting into a crucial week-and-a-half portion of their schedule against some of the worst teams in the major leagues. Welcome to everyone. Great to have you with us. Just before we get going, a big thanks to the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. Our friends at Coolbet Canada, brand new lock shop on the Labor Day weekend in the CFL. Check that out wherever you get your favorite pods. Our friends at Princess Auto, Little Brown Jug, Aikens Lake, Breezy Bend, Assiniboia Downs, and the Winnipeg Goldeyes, BP Royal Sports, Consolidated Supply, F Apparel, and Nick and Nicky DQ, Vita Health Fresh Market, Wallace and Wallace, Manitoba Battery, Canadian Club, Aquatech, and Modern Man Barbershop. Slat Man, what is going on?
Man, I'm feeling the heat as the clock goes down to my first draft. I know you were saying you're getting a little mental fatigue from all these drafts, and I'm not there yet, and I'm mentally fatigued, man. It's a crazy time of year.
Yeah, I luckily, and listen, I've said this before. I love this time of year. I love getting together with the fellas, even if it's online and making our picks and getting ready for the season. Been in 4 different leagues and all different types. I mean, one was more of a dynasty, one is a redraft, one's a keeper league with a couple guys. But yeah, I've been through the National Football League offensive players for a total of about 20 hours, it seems, over the course of this week. So
you've been through the draft gauntlet.
Yeah, exactly. A couple more next week, but we're heading into the weekend. And now, I mean, I just finished up doing the lock shop with Dustin Nielsen, who will be calling the Labor Day Classic in Regina. So really I'm focused in on the Canadian Football League this weekend. And you know, this next couple of weeks, I mean, with these back-to-backs between Winnipeg and Saskatchewan and Labor Day in Regina, and then back here in Winnipeg for the Banjo Bowl, certainly 2 of the most fun weeks of the CFL regular season, and there's a lot to get to. Just quickly, shout out to everybody in chat. Great to see everyone in here. Hit us up. Actually, I've got a great why not question of the day for you guys in a minute, which we will get, but I am interested as to how many people that are here right now. Anybody heading out to Regina for the game on the weekend? It's shaping up to be a great weekend. Have you seen the forecast for Winnipeg for Saturday?
No, I'm not.
It's going to be 34 degrees. I was completely caught off guard by that. It hasn't really been that hot around here the last little bit.
Not the last little bit. And usually it's like, this is the weekend we're like hoping for decent weather, right? Is the last weekend of summer. But man, see, that's too hot for me though, Huss. I like,
it is. Dude, we can't complain. We
25.
cannot complain about that because guess what? In a little
Bring
bit,
it, man. I'm one of those people.
It's winter.
Prefer winter. I prefer winter. I like summer, but I am a hot-blooded dude. I need that winter cold air in my face. I need the river to freeze over so I can skate and get physically active again. Man, it is underrated. It's called Winnipeg for a reason because Winnipeg knows how to do winter, unlike any other city.
You know what? I was just thinking, you know, for a guy whose career has taken him all over the country, it's now making sense why you have loved Winnipeg as much as you have and have made it your home with your wife. Because listen, dude, I think everyone knows if you're into winter, this is a great spot. This is a great spot.
And winter sucks everywhere, like anywhere in Canada except for maybe Vancouver. Like there's something terrible about winter. I hated winter in Toronto because it's that like damp, slushy snow. You always had like soakers in your feet. Edmonton would get super cold like for a couple of weeks where it was just like, you know, mind-blowing cold, but overall it was fine. The thing I didn't like about Edmonton is that it never felt like the sun fully came up in that like heart of winter. It was like the sun was rising and right when you felt like it was about to peak, it just started setting again. It always felt like you were in like that sunrise sunset mode. And then in Regina, the wind will slice your face off. That was my rudest awakening. I think the worst one I had in terms of cold was that one winter I spent in Regina because it was so windy, and it was like that bitter, dry wind in your face. Like I wanted to cry the first time I had it. I went to Mark's warehouse that first cold day. I was almost in tears. For some reason, it was a press conference outside. I went right to Mark's. I think I spent like $80 on earmuffs and whatever I spent. They could have charged me $700, Huss. I would have paid it because it was the best investment I made that year. I think I still have them. It's like a commemoration of I survived Regina winter.
Had to go with earmuffs to protect that network hair for all of your stand-ups.
Got to keep the curls,
right now. Speaking of wind right now, I'm looking out here. The wind today.
It's bad. I took the dog out before this.
Yeah. I don't know how windy it's going to be come the weekend, but often when it gets really hot, that often happens. But yeah, Friday to kick off the weekend, 28 and sunny. Saturday, 34 and sunny. And 29 and sunny on Sunday, and a little bit of rain expected on Monday coming back. So we're getting a banger of a long weekend to finish off what's been a pretty awesome summer around here.
I'm looking for AC on Saturday.
Great to see some of the folks that are heading out to support the Bombers in the game. And I see Marshall Paterson's in the chat. What up, Marsh? A TSN 1290 post-game Hall of Famer. Marsh is going to be coming into a town, and he will be at the sports trivia event that we're doing at Little Brown Jug. Folks, if you don't have your tickets already, there are like hardly any left. Get them in the description of the video, or if you're listening to the podcast, go to winnipegsportstalk.com, because as of 2 nights ago, they were down to 10 tickets left for the before they were sold out. So we've had such a great time with those events, the first couple, just getting bigger and better. So if you haven't already and you do want to join us, get to winnipegsportstalk.com, click that link, or if you're with us on YouTube, hit that link in the description, and we will get going. Now, we are going to be talking some hockey. Drew Mandel is going to jump on the program, Murat as well. Probably talk a little more NFL with Brandon at the end of the program, but we've got a really interesting little bit of a rules discussion coming to the Champions League in Europe. And I know most people are not familiar with the Champions League in hockey. Most people, if you pay any attention to international soccer, know about the Champions League, which puts the best club teams in the world in UEFA going at it for one of the biggest prizes in club soccer in the world. But they do the same thing over in Europe. And as the Champions League starts today, some really innovative rules that they've done under the auspices of the IIHF. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But Slats, I wanted to hit the Blue Jays quickly with you before we kind of dive into Labor Day and everything. We need to get to this. Big win yesterday, first and foremost, and the Mets of all teams helped them out, beating the Texas Rangers. So they get back to that 2.5 game number out of the wild card. And yes, they won a series, although very disappointing they didn't get the sweep considering who they were playing against. As we were talking off air, they're going into Colorado. I think they've got the Royals. They've got the A's coming up. I mean, some really, really weak teams. So it is moving time right now for the Toronto Blue Jays. But I got to tell you, the same things that have held this team back all year long are still showing signs that it might be tough to overcome. And they don't have a lot of time left. I mean, to me, I think this season is going to be determined with how much hay they can make playing against these bottom feeders over the course of these next 3 series.
It's a huge opportunity, right? Like this is what you pray for, this part of the schedule, especially the way that this season's been going for the Blue Jays. Now they just fell out of the wild card spot, in the last few games. But my thing with the Blue Jays, historically speaking, growing up as a fan, it was always these games. Like the Royals particularly was always that team. It felt like they were never great, mostly speaking. They've had some good years throughout it, but whenever they weren't good and the Blue Jays were powerful, they were not even powerful, but like even in the Vernon Well years, they beat the Yankees. They beat the Red Sox. They beat the powerful teams in the AL East. And then when it seemed like you had hope and they were going into these games that they should win, like a Kansas City or an Oakland, in this case, Colorado, those were the ones they would lose. Like those would be the series they would lose and ultimately miss out on the playoffs. right? And we went a lot of years with no playoff baseball before that 2015 run. So part of me is optimistic in the sense that this is a good opportunity. You won that series, right? It wasn't pretty. You should have swept it for sure. But at the end of the day, you won the series, which is, the goal in every series you go into. They also ended that series on a very, very high note, right? I mean, you had Chris Bassett with 8 innings, 3 hits, shutout. He was fantastic. The pitching's been fantastic for them overall. Kirk, I love Alejandro Kirk. He goes in there, he's not playing every
me
day as the
too.
catcher. He's splitting with Danny Jansen, but this guy just, doesn't look like he's much of a, doesn't have the athletic build, so to speak, but then, he's got the heart. Like that guy, he had a double last night where he just hustled as soon as it was off the bat. He's not swinging for the fences. He's just trying to get in scoring position to get the team on the board. He also had 3 RBIs last night. I mean, he does it all. He's such a great asset to this team. And it's almost too bad he doesn't play more. Like Danny Jansen has his moments, but like you almost want to see Kirk all the time. I just love watching that guy play. He's one of my favorites.
Kirk is not only is Kirk, I mean, a hitting savant, if you ask me. He's also one of the most interestingly built players. I mean, he's basically a hot water tank with legs.
And
is
he's
he going to
quick.
steal
Like
30
he's actually
bases?
quick.
Well, he's deceivingly quick, I think, from what you expect from
Yeah,
him. But listen, you know what? Those clutch hits that he had yesterday, that's been something that this team has been missing all year long. Like, Joey, I still scratch my head and try to understand how this team is 2.5 games out of a wild card with the lineup that they have and the pitching that they've got all year long. This is the ERA of their starting 4 right now. Bassett, 381. Berrios, 370. Gosman, 330. Kikuchi, 363. I mean, they have been getting elite starting pitching, quality starts all year long. And for a team that has the likes of Bo Bichette, albeit he's been injured as of late, Chapman, and Vlad Guerrero, maybe the biggest culprit, they just have not hit with runners in scoring position all year long. And this team needs to find the ability to be a little bit more clutch right now, because this entire season is riding on this next little bit. And I don't know about you, but if the Toronto Blue Jays miss the playoffs this year, this will go down as an absolute failure of the organization. Big changes will happen. I'm sure Schneider would be gone. But I mean, you look at this team, the way it's built, and the starting pitching that they've gotten, this is the opportunity for them to contend with the best in Major League Baseball. Like, they should not even be in the situation they're in right now had they got a few more clutch hits over the year.
I could not agree with you more, because this year they went out and got the pitching that they needed, right? Like in the last few years, as I said yesterday, right, it was always the pitching. A starter would come in, and not live up to expectation or get injured, or, even this year, Manoah going down. Like there's always been issues with pitching, but this year, overall, the pitching's been pretty strong, right? The one thing we didn't think we'd have to worry about is the bats, and having Vladdy Guerrero and Bo Bichette and, Chapman and all these guys, hitting. That's what they're paid to do, and they're paid good money to do it. And Chris Bassett, actually, yesterday after the game, I caught the post-game interview, and he said something interesting. And he was saying, like, this team, when it pops, we're going far. Like, the season is not over. And if these bats start getting going and everybody's clicking like it's supposed to, this is a scary team. They have maybe one of the best, if not the best, pitching rotations in baseball. They've got the most powerful hitters on paper that have just not panned out this season, right? So you look at the lineup in terms of what they built, and yeah, organizational failure, sure, but like, where do you put the onus on, right? To me, it's the players, or maybe Schneider. Like, something is not clicking that's getting these guys motivated. We've heard this even in hockey. At some point the players have to motivate themselves. You can only do so much. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen now, because these guys have been, the young guys coming up. The city's loved them. The country's loved them. We've been, ton of hope around these guys. And now
the building's been packed all year long too. I mean, like, they've had
it's been packed for years.
Support. I mean,
right? It's been packed for years because of the promise and hope.
I'm buddies with JD Bunkus, who does the JD Bunkus pod, for Sportsnet in Toronto, and we did some work together.
I interned with him back.
We had him on at the beginning of the show, and he was saying that, like, right now they've had, I mean, a huge boost, like right from the start, attendance wise, and like there is a real frustration level of the fan base right now because everyone knows how talented this team is. And it's one thing or another so often. I think he called them unbelievably believable because you're used to it at this point. That being said,
Like I
they
said
got a
yesterday,
nice win
fascinating.
yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's fascinating.
I
This
mean,
team is fascinating. Like, it's
confounding.
like you're almost watching a train wreck sometimes, but you just can't look away. Like, and I would love to see what the ratings are this year too compared to other seasons, because I feel like people are still watching because for two reasons: to see when is this team going to finally pop, right? Like, it has to be coming. I refuse to believe that roster is not going to pop at some point this year. It'd be nice because that means it's going into the playoffs on a nice rate. But what moves can you make if you look at going? Say they miss the playoffs, right? I mean, what's the first move that you make to change the roster? Like, looking at it again on paper, seeing the roster they built, there's no easy answer. It's just guys that haven't performed this year, and some that it's been a little bit ongoing since they've arrived in Toronto. Right? Yeah. Well, but even then, so like, let's just say like you got that gift, right? Like, how does that help this in terms of, yeah, you got the greatest player and everything else, but like, it's the rest of the lineup that's a problem. And like, say if you want to do something really bold, like trade a star player, what are you going to get back for them right now? Right? Because now every other team's looking at these guys.
Chapman's a free agent too. Chapman's a free agent.
So you got to look at him like, I think you want to bring him back, but after this season, it's not as easy as a decision as it was, say, last year, right? And he's getting a little bit older too. So then you got to take into these things into factor. What term is he looking for? How much money? And is the market out there for him too? Are you competing with anybody like you would have been if his free agency was coming into this year, right? So it's a lot of like, there's no answers. Like, I would hate to be the general manager of the Blue Jays right now because I'd be looking at it like, I've done everything. I've got what I fix one thing, I patch one hole and another hole breaks open in another department. Like, it seems impossible at this point until it's not, right? All it takes is one stretch of 5-6 game win streak, and then you got to win the one and dones in the playoffs, get into the series, and then all you got to do is beat the other team more times than you get beat, right? They've not had their run this year. Whoa. And every team has a big losing streak, and every team has a win streak usually in a season, and the Blue Jays have not had their really heart-filled run yet.
Well, and the funny thing is Texas, who's holding down that final wild card, is actually 3-7 in their last 10. And I mean, they made some big additions, at the deadline, getting Scherzer in from the Mets, but they haven't been playing particularly well. But I mean, they're still 17 games above 500. So the Jays have some work to do. Starts off today in Colorado tomorrow to take on the Rockies, who have been ugly to say the least. They are the dead last team in the National League, and were it not for Oakland and Kansas City, the next two teams the Jays play, they'd be the worst team in the majors. So there's a little Jays update on the off day as they head into a real crucial part of the season. Some big news in the CFL today. And again, the eyes are all going to be on the big games on the weekend, the rivalry games, the Labor Day Classic, and then between the Bombers and Riders, and then the two games on Monday. And, of course, BC looking to get back at it against Montreal. But Chad Kelly's got a new 3-year deal with the Toronto Argonauts. And, Joey, it's funny the way things have worked out for the man they call Swag. Because he came here to the Canadian Football League really like many guys that, get a limited opportunity in the NFL, don't play much, don't do much, had some off-field issues, to say the least, and finds himself there. Played behind MBT last year, didn't play much. We saw him in the Grey Cup, but he's been a huge reason why the Argos, as of right now, are still the betting favorite to win the Grey Cup. And for anyone that was worried that, he was going to be leaving right afterwards, the Argos investing in their future, getting Chad on a 3-year deal. He'll make a significant raise and probably can make in and around Zach Caleros money, being close to the highest paid quarterback in the league. But a big, big move by the Argos to sort of secure that future and not have to go back to the drawing board at the end of this year for a guy that's, taken the reins from MBT and maybe made this team even better.
Well, that's it, right? Like, because MBT, he went to, was it the USFL? Which league was it?
That's where he went because he thought that he was going to get some
and he wanted to be closer to home and all that, right? So
it didn't.
But like, it's kind of funny because
the way it goes, the money.
But the way it goes down, it kind of feels like what Nathan Rourke's hoping for, right? Like just for a starting quarterback to go away, just so you get your opportunity to step up and shine. But good for Chad Kelly because, as you say, you look at the Argos. Was it 2 years ago when they started getting in fights with the fans after like Hamilton took over their stadium at BMO Field, and it just kind of seemed like Pinball Clemens is coming to break it up, and it just kind of seemed like in that moment, like, man, these Argonauts like do not have it buttoned up at all. And then they turn it around last year, right? They make the acquisition, they get Harris in there, and then from building on Harris and as a guy that comes into that championship pedigree with the Blue Bombers that brought the Blue Bombers up really to where they are now. And now he's almost, I wouldn't say he's doing it solely responsible, but you look at the culture of the team. I'm sure he had a big part of that into what they're building now in the East. They won a Grey Cup last year. They look poised to get back there this year. And Chad Kelly has been solid, right? Like you want a solid quarterback, and it looks like he's having fun right now, when you're destroying teams left, right, and center. But if you have good quarterback play, they have a strong running back, like a tandem in running backs, really. He's got some good receivers. They've been strong defensively. So, I mean, you look at this team, you got your guy. And if you're looking at trying to draw players now as you try to build yourself into trying to be the next, the Blue Bombers of the East, so to speak, we've got our guy, right? We trust this guy 100%. We've signed him in for the long haul. So if you're coming here, like we are committed to winning for the next 3 years. And that's going to be a huge draw as they're trying to fill some holes as guys, I'm sure a guy like Andrew Harris might retire at the end of this year. I mean, we were wondering at the end of Grey Cup last year if that was his last game. So there's
play
they still have to. Yeah, exactly. That's what I think too. Doesn't look like he's slowing down at all, right? He gets a little injury, breasts up a little bit, and off he goes like nothing ever happened. But I just think it's a.
Do you remember how Chad Kelly's time in the NFL ended? I'm not sure a lot of people remember this story, but it is quite funny. And it's great to see that he has established himself in the CFL and he's got his contract because, he was coming out of Old Miss and he was like a bad boy in the SEC. He was on another team. I think he got kicked off. He went and had a great run and ended up getting picked. He was Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick in the 7th round by the Denver Broncos in 2017. Basically the exact same situation Brock Purdy was in with the 49ers as the last pick in the draft. He was quite good and he was with the team. Von Miller had a Halloween party. Chad went there and he certainly has a rep for enjoying himself. Enjoyed himself probably a little too much. Left the party and went into the wrong house. He entered a couple's residence completely lit. And then there was a video of him getting chased out of the home with a vacuum cleaner and he was wearing a cowboy costume. So
yes,
the career arc of Chad Kelly from Von Miller's Halloween party to signing a 3-year extension with the Toronto Argonauts and becoming a Grey Cup champion in the middle is really, really quite interesting.
I remember the Mr. Irrelevant pick, but forgot about that whole party thing. That's so funny.
Yeah, take an Uber, folks, and get that address right when you're deciding when you're checking out. Slats, good luck in your pool tonight. Tomorrow,
thank you.
Heading into the weekend, we can do a little recon of your picks. I'm going to talk to our friend Drew Mandel about a little bit of that. We're going to hit a whole bunch of things with Drew. Obviously, we know Drew mainly talking hockey on a legal curve, but I know he's going to have some good CFL Labor Day Classic takes. And we were just in a pool together, so we'll probably get into a little bit of NFL as well. But Slats, fun having you hang out all week. Have a good one tonight, and we'll look forward to kicking it up on a Friday in about 23 and a half hours from now tomorrow.
Looking forward to it. I'm also looking forward to the show lineup. Have fun with the boys and Murat and all them. And we'll see you tomorrow. Hopefully I have a championship team to present to you.
Good stuff. Yeah, murderer's row of guests today, starting with Drew Mandel, Murat, Rewucki coming up a little later on. Joey Slattery, take it easy. Give Slats a follow, folks, on Twitter at Joey Slattery TV. All right, just before we get to our pal IC Drew. Let me give a big shout out to our friends at Modern Man Barbershops. Now, guys, with 8 locations in Winnipeg, conveniently located around the city, including the 2 newest locations on Pembina Highway and on Plessy Road. Modern Man Barbershops has everything that a man could need when they're heading into the shop. Haircuts, beard shaping, shaves, color services, and more. Make an appointment and book your look very easily at any of the 8 locations at the same website, modernmanbarber.com. And while you're flicking around on IG, give them a follow on Instagram at Modern Man Barbershops. Hard to believe it is the final day of August. September is tomorrow. I'll tell you what, there is still time, and maybe you're just planning, working with our friends at Aquatech about making sure that the 2024 summer has you spending all of it in a pool. Of course, Aquatech are the leaders in above ground or in-ground pools, and they make all those dreams come true. And of course, home renovations start with Aquatech, with thousands of rentals as their foundation. Aquatech can upgrade any space in your home. And as well, if you're looking to finance, their team can provide plans that suit you. Limited install dates left. Visit Aquatech in store or online to learn how they can make your in-ground, above-ground pool dreams a reality. More info at aqua-tech.ca. Well, we were just going over this forecast for the long weekend. 34 on Saturday. It's going to feel like the middle of summer as opposed to the end. Lots of time to get out and make the most of it. But you got to have your batteries for those long weekend hijinks with the family and friends. Whether you're getting out into a boat, a lawn tractor, a camper, ATVs, motorcycles, whatever you do, you got to have batteries for it. And Manitoba Battery is your local option with the best prices in town. It's really that easy. Get to manitobabattery.com for the best prices on batteries of all makes and models, beating the pants off the big box stores. And not only will you be saving money, you'll be saving time finding a parking spot at Costco or waiting in a line at Canadian Tire, because Manitoba Battery will deliver that battery to you for free anywhere inside the perimeter with any purchase over $60. Get on over to manitobabattery.com to make your order. Give them a phone call, or if you'd like to pop by and see Donnie and his great staff, you can do that at 1026 Logan Avenue. Just before we bring in Drew, hey, it is long weekend coming up, and I'll tell you what, we don't have to wait to the Banjo Bowl to get our hands on some of those delicious Canadian Club and ginger ale premix cocktails. When you're picking up beer for the road, maybe grabbing a few little brown jugs to take out to Regina, grab a few CC and gingers as well. Great drink in the summer, and you'll see those all over IG Field next week for the Banjo Bowl, as of course Canadian Club is the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and of course all the CC products available at the LC, because Manitoba Liquor Marts are open again as the strike has been averted. All right, let's get to our pal Drew Mandel. It was great to see Drew, who hosted Jamie Thomas's draft earlier this week. We got a little NFL talk. We got a big football game on the weekend. We got a hockey season around the corner. Drew, what's up? How's your summer been?
Summer's been great. I'm off to a great start. I already knocked down my camera, so let's get that back up and running. There we go, Huss. I'm doing great, brother. How you doing? It was great seeing you earlier this week. A lot of fun. There's some bad draft picks notwithstanding, but a lot of fun was had nonetheless.
How refreshed are you right now from going an entire month without having to deal with Ezzy Ginsburg and Dave Minuk?
You know what? I love Ezzy and Dave very deeply. You know that. But this month is very important to all of us to just get that little bit of time and space away from one another. Every now and then you need a little bit of a weekend away from your significant other. That's the equivalent thereof for me, getting this month away from Dave and Ezzy. We leave each other alone for a solid month, but we return refreshed, recharged, and ready to make YouTube, TV, podcast magic yet again. I see back next Saturday, Banjo Bowl, Saturday, 9 a.m.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to it. And I tell you what, you guys nailed it, because you picked the perfect time. Like, literally nothing has happened since you got, I guess
No.
Logan Stanley signed a 1-year, $1 million contract. That is the extent of anything happening with the Winnipeg Jets so far. And it'll probably be just in time for you guys to get back. We have players, and we have, I think, you know what, I want to talk actually about some other hockey topics in the football as well. But
Yeah.
first off, I mean, what do you make of the Jets situation going in? I mean, obviously they made a big trade, and there's 3 players coming in. A couple guys we thought might be traded are still here. What do you expect to happen when training camp starts, and what are the biggest questions for you when you look at this hockey club before we drop the puck in Calgary on the 11th of October?
I would say that the Jets are trying to draw to an inside straight, if I can use a poker analogy. It seems like their plan, if you can even call it that, is to hope that everything lines up perfectly, that all these dominoes fall perfectly, that, Scheifele becomes rejuvenated and decides that has a commitment to defense and he wants to stay in Winnipeg. And then the team goes on a run and they get back to being close to a Stanley Cup contender, and maybe that keeps Hellebuck around on a long-term deal. I think that they are definitely, hoping, and they're living on a wing and a prayer if they expect all these things to happen and to break successfully and to somehow have this window, as we've talked about for so many years, reopen. I talk to people even, in August, and they say, what's the plan? And I say to them, I don't know what the plan is, because it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. It seems like they're going to try and, find a way to maybe squeak into the playoffs or even become a playoff team. And then maybe that'll be enough to convince Scheifele and Hellebuck. But so much uncertainty. We know this team loves to kick the can down the road. They love to not make any difficult decisions until they absolutely have to. The problem with doing that, the problem with waiting to the trade deadline is, to make those decisions is, maybe it's not quite a buyer's market that it might have been in the off season. So they're definitely taking a risk. They're definitely think that it's an educated risk, is I'm sure what they're thinking, but, will it pay off in the end? That is truly what I'm skeptical about.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll say this. I think the reason why we're having these same conversations is not a hesitancy from Winnipeg Jets to do anything. I think it was the fact that there just wasn't the market that I think a lot of people, myself included, expected there would be for Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck.
Well, for Connor Hellebuck, I think that, goaltenders are like running backs in the NFL right now. Nobody wants to pay for a goaltender, or you don't think you need to pay for a goaltender. You think you can find one, for cheap. You can find one to fill in. I don't think that you can, like they do with running backs in the NFL. And with Mark Scheifele, well, why is anybody paying big dollars for Mark Scheifele? Yeah, he can get you 40 goals, but he gives up 50 goals based on his defensive performance. Teams are, by and large, they're smarter and don't just get caught up in flashy, goal numbers without looking at the downside to things. Mark Scheifele is going to resuscitate his trade value simply if he plays better hockey on both ends of the ice. Can he do that? Will he do that? Well, I'm skeptical. We haven't seen it. Is he listening to someone other than Adam Oates for once, who's saying, maybe goal scoring isn't the be all and end all. Maybe you do need to be a more complete player. That would be a huge change. And we haven't seen any evidence that that's what's going on. I'm sure if that's the case, the Jets would be, overwhelmingly thrilled to have that development occur and have him either improve his value to the Jets themselves or improve his value on the trade market. But, if you're you hear, Boston, making connections between the, Scheifele and the Bruins after the Bruins, lost all the players they did in the offseason. Is there a player who seems less like a Boston Bruins player than Mark Scheifele right now? I mean, the Bruins are built with a defensive approach. Patrice Bergeron was Patrice Bergeron, not just because of his offensive numbers, but because he was a defensive stalwart. I mean, all of a sudden, you think Mark Scheifele is coming in to be any sort of, 1/10 of a Patrice Bergeron, you're probably fooling yourself.
Yeah, let's just say that has not been the Bergeron has not been the blueprint for the Scheifele. And listen, he does a lot of things.
No.
He's done a lot of great things for this team. I mean, he's been part of some of their biggest successes. But I mean, we talked to a lot of people in Nashville, and I see Drager or whatever. Like, why are we not hearing much more? Because it was very clear that the Winnipeg Jets, they were buying Blake Wheeler out, and Mark was very closely tied to Blake, and I think they saw the writing on the wall with 1 year left of the contract, and I still don't believe. I mean, maybe there's some discussions internally and there's some different viewpoints within the organization, but I don't think that this team is thinking about making another investment into Mark Scheifele after this. I think they sort of realized that the time had come, but there was two things. I think his reputation has taken a little bit of a hit over the last couple of years about the way the seasons have ended, what people have heard from him, and a lack of maybe commitment to what the coach has been wanting to do for the betterment of the team as opposed to the individual. And then the other thing is, and this, we've heard this for a long time, there is an expectation, I'd been told, that, you know, the ask for an extension from Mark Scheifele is going to be significant. Now, you can always ask, you don't necessarily get it, but there's a lot into it. And I think that all played into it too, because the bottom line is the guy can produce for any team in the National Hockey League to a certain level.
Yeah, look, there's no question that you know, Mark Scheifele on the offensive side of the game is one of the better goal scorers in the league. He was last year. He's been a consistent goal scorer, and we know that scoring goals is the hardest thing to do in the NHL. No question about that. I'm never going to denigrate him for his ability to do that, and that has a significant value to it. But at the same time, all the other items that you just mentioned, Huss, are going to, right now, they're serving to depress his market and depress his value. And the only way for that to change is for Mark himself to prove everyone wrong, to prove that he's going to be more than just a one-trick pony, albeit a very difficult trick to pull off. Now, that's, I think, what the Jets are going to need to see from him, and what Mark Scheifele is going to need to demonstrate over the first few months of the season. Otherwise, depending on where the Jets are come close to the trade deadline, are they going to be stuck holding on to him, potentially losing him for nothing in the offseason, or are they going to have to settle for pennies on the dollar because he's still just that one-trick pony? That's the reality of the situation for the Winnipeg Jets right now. By whether they didn't make the move because there wasn't a market that they were interested in, or they didn't make the move because they think that they can run back this team to greater success, that both of those are quite possible. But, eventually you have to bleep or get off the can, and that eventually won't be that long into the season.
I definitely do see a scenario where Scheifele's trade value and offers to the Winnipeg Jets are significantly higher this season and towards the trade deadline than they would have been in the offseason. I think that if there was anything good that made sense for the team to do it, they would have done it. And it hasn't happened.
Well, come the trade deadline, if he gets traded there, what the trade is going to be. It's going to be probably a first-round pick. It's going to be a young prospect, and maybe it's going to be a roster player. We know what the trade deadline trades always look like. They always look at some variation to that. Yeah, I mean, that would be, you're talking about a draft pick. Let's assume he goes to a team that has, that's an upper echelon team that has designs of finishing, in the, either getting to a conference final. I mean, if you're trading for Mark Scheifele, you're hoping that he's taking you to the Stanley Cup, or you're hoping he's taking you to the conference final. You're not hoping to squeeze into the first round and then be one and done. Whatever the pick is going to be, it's not going to be a player who's probably going to come in and make an immediate impact on the Winnipeg Jets team. And whoever, you don't know about the young player, whoever it might be. I mean, again, the Jets are just sort of stuck in this mushy middle, and they have been for the last number of years, and people don't want to be stuck in the mushy middle. Playoff, revenue is great. Playoff gates are great, for True North, but are they great for the fan base to get, 2 home playoff games and that's it? Or does the fan base deserve
to be
more?
in the playoffs? Deserve more. What, a shitty team that bottoms out? I mean, I know it's great in theory to say, and everyone, especially the people.
Huss. How many people that are buying tickets?
How many people that are buying tickets that are buying that? I'd love to know how many season ticket holders want to pay the freight to support this team, to go there and to watch the team intentionally trade all the quality players on the team and be terrible. That number, it's very easy to say it from the living room or something like that. Oh yeah, and in 3 or 4 years when the team's good again, I'll come back. I mean, that I don't
Yeah,
think that is, you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying, and that's a completely legitimate argument, and I have time for your argument. And it's easy for me to say that the team should bottom out, and I don't necessarily believe that they should, because they still have enough talent there that I think there's other alternatives to strictly
Yeah.
bottoming out. But I think what the fan base deserves is to be informed of what the vision is. And that's the thing I hear from so many people that I talk to in the community. And I'm sure you talk to the same number of people. They just don't know what the vision is. What's the vision for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years for this team moving forward? And, from the get-go, the Jets, and this is an organizational flaw, I would suggest, have never really been forthcoming with the fan base as to what the approach is and what the blueprint looks like. And you're just supposed to buy tickets. Trust us, we're not going to tell you what the blueprint is, but there's a blueprint, and just buy your tickets. I think respecting the fan base would require them to not necessarily completely draw back the curtain, but to provide a little bit more, just articulate what the vision is more than they're doing, which I would say is fairly limited or none at this point.
Well, I mean, listen, I mean, I think that there's no teams want to make the playoffs and they want to compete and they want to try and win the Stanley Cup. I mean, the only
Right.
and I think of what the Rangers did a few years ago. I mean, they communicated a plan because they were about to make some really tough decisions that they knew were going to be unpopular with a lot of people that, support the club. They're going to move on from Henrik Lundqvist and do those sorts of things. So that, and I think at that time, if the organization does it, I mean, it'll be obvious, but I think that will be put forth. I mean, right now, and this is the thing, it goes contrary to maybe some people that say this group is washed, move on from it. They still believe that this is a team that, can be better and can do better than they did with the playoff series last year. And then obviously the way that they went out. I mean,
look,
we'll find out. The proof will be in the pudding when the actual season gets going on.
Absolutely, it will. And I think this team could come out and be similar to last year's team and sort of come out like gangbusters and surprise a lot of people, because there's still a lot of talent on this roster. And, the absence of Blake Wheeler, I do think, will be a positive. And I don't want to relitigate that again. We've already talked about that ad nauseum for the last however many months. So it would not surprise me again if come November or, end of November, if this team is in a very good position, playing in a central division that's not very good. They still have some talent. The question is, will this team, if that's the case, then I think they should load up and go for it, go for broke, not like last year where they talked about going for broke and then ultimately didn't, because all this hesitation, seeped in, and then we know what the disaster was in the second half of the year.
Thank God they didn't last year. I mean, I was one of the people saying, for everyone banging the drum going, let's go all in. I'm like, are you nuts? Is anyone watching this team play for the last 2 months?
Well, but I'm not the one who said it. It was the general manager who said it. It was Kevin Cheveldayoff when the team was in Buffalo. He's the guy who's in charge of this team, who's talking about this team deserves a chance. This team deserves reinforcements to move the team forward and be a playoff, a tough team to play against in the playoffs and a contender. And then he's the one who said it, and then he did nothing about it. So that's the disconnect I'm talking about that I think needs to be alleviated at some point in time. If you're going to go for it, go for it. If you're not going to go for it, don't say you're going to go for it and then not do something. It just seems like you're meandering out of control like a drunk toddler driving his parents' car.
Toddlers should not be drinking. Toddlers, not at this point. Yeah. Well, listen, I think that, I mean, unfortunately, the way the season went last year, and I mean, in a lot of ways, it reminded me of 2018-19, where the team
so if you're in
had
a
great first half of the season, and then, there was not anything that team was doing on the ice heading into the trade deadline that if I was the general manager saying, as much as I want to spend some assets and go, this isn't going anywhere. And it would be insane to do that, which kind of brings us to this moment right here in this year, because Drew, I don't think any of the top prospects are going to be playing on the club this year. Maybe a guy like Lambert will get a couple games coming up from the Moose. But that following year,
you can't expect anything. Yeah.
That following year, you've got the potential to have McGroarty, Barlow, Brad Lambert, Chaz Lucius, all potentially being part of that team. And at that point, you open up. I mean, listen, you're probably taking a bit of a step back because, I mean, 4 rookies in a lineup, and who knows if Salmon's son's a part of the club as well. All of a sudden, you're going really young at that point. However, if the Jets are able to get a couple more picks this year, like in this upcoming draft, you then sort of have a group where those guys will be on their ELCs for 3 years. You'll have some picks that will then be coming in. Like, it sort of does start up that 3.0 era, if you will, that we've been talking about for a long time. And that is why, I mean, you know, taking apart the support and the business side of things, like, what is the best case scenario for the Jets? For this season, like, I think win games, be competitive, hopefully make the playoffs. But I do think it's important to get, if you know that Scheifele's gone, if you know that Hellebuck's gone at the end of the season, I think it's important to do what you can do to maximize the value of those 2 players in particular, allow for other guys to step in and maybe fill those roles, and then utilize, in all likelihood, picks to kind of top up that prospect pool that'll be coming after that group of 4 that everyone's so excited about that could potentially all be playing in the NHL next season.
Yeah, look, the next wave is very close to being upon the Winnipeg Jets, and there will be obviously a transition. And you know the old adage that every rookie you play costs you X number of games in your lineup because it takes time to learn how to play at the NHL level, especially in an elevated role that is envisioned for those 4 players that you mentioned. Look, there's no question that there's definitely a changing of the guard that's rapidly approaching for the Winnipeg Jets. The question is, I mean, this year, what happens in the interim? What happens before those players are ready to go? If this team, if this team really is looking like something significant, do you use one of those assets to try and acquire somebody to bolster the roster for this season? And I don't know if you necessarily would do that, but it all depends on how things are looking. It's a fascinating situation that the Jets find themselves in, both on the cusp of a next wave, a next generation of players coming into the lineup and a current generation departing, but at the same time, that current generation having high hopes for achieving something of significance during this year.
Hey, Drew, before we go, I know
sir.
you're going to be paying close attention to that football game on the weekend. What's your call for the LDC? More misery for the green-clad fans?
Yes. I mean, there's no reason to think that they're not going to be miserable and they're not going to be smashing their watermelons themselves at the end of the Labor Day Classic. It's going to be a close game. It usually always is. The last number of games have been close, and the Bombers pull it off in the end, getting 10 unanswered in the fourth quarter. I don't see it being... Sorry, my throat's going on me. I'm not used to talking it this much, but I don't see it being any different this year, but I do think the Bombers are going to win. And then I think on Banjo Bowl Saturday, the Bombers are going to probably blow them out at home. That's sort of been the MO of the last number of years. It's, that's my favorite.
I love it.
That's my favorite day of the year, that Banjo Bowl Saturday. IC returns that morning. My wife and I go and we start doing a little bit of day drinking. We leave the kids with the grandparents overnight. So we have a little bit of fun. We're tipping a few back at the IG field. It's, oftentimes the weather has been gorgeous. That's I'm looking forward to that. I expect Labor Day will hopefully end up positive for those of us in blue and gold, and then the Banjo Bowl the following week. You got the NFL starting. College football really gets underway in earnest tonight. It's a football lover's dream for the next few weekends, and then of course the NHL season right around the corner. It's really a great time of year.
I'm with you. I mean, Labor Day weekend is incredible because it is technically a long weekend, but I think next weekend, at least if you're a big football fan like we are here in Winnipeg, the Saturday festivities of the Banjo Bowl leading into the festivities of the first full Sunday of the National Football League, it doesn't get much better. Drew, great to have you on the show. Looking forward to you and the fellas firing it up again a week Saturday for the Illegal Curve Hockey Show in the morning. And let's do this again soon. Great seeing you this week. Thanks for coming on.
Anytime, Huss. You know how to find me. Always love doing it with you, brother.
Good stuff. At IC Drew, and of course at Illegal Curve. I don't need to tell you about that. The boys are just 9 days away from getting back together, and I'm sure it'll be like they never left. All right. Really looking forward to getting Murat back on the program today. He's coming up, and we're going to talk about some interesting rules that they're testing out in the Champions League. And we were just touching off at the start. But listen, just before we do that, big shout out to our friends at Vita Health Fresh Market. Folks, if you're looking for great prices on natural and organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries, get on down to one of the 6 Vita Health Fresh Market stores or online at myvita.ca, which now has same-day local delivery if you place your order at MyVita before 11 a.m. And right now, they've got a free local delivery order when you place an order online. When checking out, use the discount code LOCALSHIP, all one word, LOCALSHIP, and free delivery anywhere else. Details are all on the website over at myvita.ca. Got hot weather this week. One more great grilling long weekend. Pick up those delicious grass-fed bison and beef steaks. Maybe some Sober Carpenter beer, Santa Cruz lemonade for that. And by the way, if your joints and muscles are a little sore from all your outdoor activities, get on down there and try Health Curcumin Supreme Extra Strength, helping ease pain and inflammation. Vita Health, empowering people to lead healthy lives, 6 Winnipeg locations, and online at myvita.ca. Our friends at Wallace & Wallace have had a very busy summer. Not only are they the fencing and overhead door experts in town, but they've been doing so much temporary fencing as the experts there. If you've ever got temporary fencing needs, Wallace & Wallace has you covered. And of course, if you need the security and protection of a new fence, they've got vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood fences, and the biggest selection of overhead garage doors in town as the exclusive Clopay dealer. Just give them a call at 452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Crescent off of Kenniston. How's the closet looking, fellas? If you got to up your menswear game heading into fall, you need to get on down to F Apparel. Custom suits beginning at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. And hey, if you're in a wedding party or having a wedding next year, talk to Andrew and his staff about a 15% discount when the wedding party gets suited up at F Apparel. They're at 190 Smith Street downtown. Check them out online as well at that's EPH apparel.com. And you know what? I got to give a big shout out to our pal, Nick and Nikki. Of course, there are friends from the Nick and Nikki DQ group with 4 locations, including the DQ in Niverville. Today, they're opening the new Pita Pit in Niverville. Obviously, many of you have tried Pita Pit. If you haven't already, great, healthy food to go. Fresh, affordable catering. A quick, healthy meal for the family, and the only fresh fruit smoothies in Niverville. So if you're in the Niverville area, get on down there, say hi to them, tell them the gang here sent you. And you can also follow them and inquire on catering at Pita Pit Niverville. So congratulations to Nick and Nikki on that. All right, let's get Murat in here to keep the party going on a Thursday afternoon. Hit that thumbs up, by the way, everyone. Let's get that over 100. Murat, what's up, man? How are you?
Hey, I'm good. I like the Friday vibes you try to trick us with, but
already in long weekend
holiday. So this is just a pleasure call for me.
I love it. Listen, we want to get to some of the NHL stories, but something really interesting came across my feed today, and it is involving the Champions League out in Europe. Gordon Miller tweeted this out, and so this Champions League, which I think, by the way, just that concept is so cool, and I know, we focus so much on the one league we have here in North America, but it's very different in Europe, and much like the UEFA Champions League in soccer, top teams from all the leagues play, and it's a big hit. But the double IHF has started with a new format featuring 24 teams, but there's some new rules. And I wanted to get your take on this, and it's going to lead to our why not question of the day for the folks in the chat. A team will remain shorthanded even if the opposing team scores a goal. A minor penalty will be served even if a goal is scored while a delayed penalty is pending. And this is the wild one. If a shorthanded team scores, the minor penalty against will end. What do you think about these new tweaks they're doing to some of the rules they're using in this league?
I mean, first off, it's fun. Anytime that you're willing to try to play around with this stuff, I think I'm entertained. It's Champions League hockey. It's not the Stanley Cup final, and I want to know how that goes. And then in terms of those three options, I'm kind of lukewarm about one. I like one a lot, and I actually don't like one of them. So the idea that you've got the puck, the other team's taken a penalty, it's delayed, and you score, and that penalty still happens. I love that. I think that's absolutely right. It's in, to me, the spirit of the game as well. Like, penalize them for it. So what, you scored. You should get a 2-minute power play for that. If they made that in the NHL tomorrow, I think I'd be completely happy with it. I also dig the going back in time, which is letting a power play keep going even after they've scored. And I think it was the 80s Oilers that necessitated the NHL moving away from that rule, that it used to be that way in the NHL where you could just keep scoring and scoring on a power play at will. Correct me if I'm wrong, historians, but that's my understanding. And I've got plenty of time for that. Somebody takes a penalty and you can punish them with the goal and you've got time on the clock, keep going. I've got plenty of time for that one. As long as you're calling the rule book and penalties fairly and you're not just putting the whistles away because you're afraid of it. The one that gets me is the idea that you can score while shorthanded and get your guy out of the box. For me, that's ultimate shame. That's like you've shamed the power play so badly because you've scored, and it gives you your guy back. I get the incentive is it, go for it, try to score. But for me, it's like, I don't know, your guy still did whatever he did or she did to get into the box. So I'm like, okay, let that one ride. That's my opinion.
I am. It's funny you focus on this one because I kind of agree. It's certainly the most interesting one. And I'm trying to wrap my head around, what the effect on play that it would be. I mean, would that generate a far more aggressive penalty kill in the league that might create some more goals both ways? I mean, get burned a little bit more and have more power plays going in, but with such a big incentive to score while shorthanded that teams, essentially play almost a different style of penalty killing with a focus more on shorthanded goals, which I think if that was the result of it, it could be a positive for the game and the entertainment level of watching it.
Yeah, I get that. Like, presumably, if you're shorthanded and you can get your guy out of the box by scoring, it incentivizes going for it a little bit more. That I get. It might incentivize the power play to be a little bit more conservative. I'm not sure on that front. Like, are we going to see the return of the 3 forward, 2 defenseman power play unit or that sort of thing? And I like it. I think in the NHL, I like it when in the NHL teams get aggressive on their PK, like the Carolinas of the world. I think Toronto is getting pretty aggressive. You can sort of run through, if you look through the chance creation numbers, you can sort of tell which teams really step on it while shorthanded, and some do in the NHL and some don't. If I was looking to like game this, I'd think to myself like, okay, you're not scoring that shorthanded goal 2 seconds in. So let's say there's like a minute left on the clock and you get your player back. Not only do you get that goal, which you want anyways, but now you've turned a minute of play, which was going to be a power play for the other team. And if the average power play scores, 20% of the time, and now you've got half a power play left, a 10% chance of a goal in that time. Compare that to what the 5-on-5 scoring rates are and things like that. Like, just how aggressive do you want your penalty kill to get? Just how passive do you want that power play to get? For me, I think there's some math to run on that before you know exactly how you should go with it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like, I love having you on because that's a very interesting way of thinking about it. And I mean, again, I think, overall, because we are talking about something that would be a change over the course of a season, and you see trends And you would have to sort of dive down, like, what is the opportunity cost of the decisions that essentially you're making, not only with the style, but also the personnel that teams are rolling out there. I mean, do they play guys that maybe, all things being equal, are a little bit worse killing the actual penalty, but have a much higher upside for maybe popping a shorthanded goal, and how they go with that? Let me hit the why not question of the day to the chat right now. The why not question of the day for our friends at Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray. Would love to hear your thoughts on these rules that they're instituting in the Champions League. As well, if there is one rule change that you could make, let us know there as well in the chat for the why not question of the day. And if you're listening to the podcast afterwards, hit us up at Sports Talk WPG. We haven't talked a lot about rules and whatnot beforehand, and usually things sort of come. I mean, the hill I will die on is not necessarily a rule change, but the way wins and losses are counted. And I mean, I think every game should be worth 3 points. Overtime, shootout wins, 2-1, 3-0 for regulation wins. I mean, that to me, I think would have a significant effect on the quality of play at the end of games, especially later on in the season when teams started looking to get points. But is there anything, when you look at the game right now and say, hey, if I'm commissioner for a day, this is the one thing that I would change, whether it's an on-ice penalty, the way things are called, or the way the structure is?
The one that I've got onto, and I hope I explain it right because it's, vacation mode and all that sort of stuff, but is what they call gold drafting, where instead of just automatically the team with the lowest points at the end of the year has the best draft lottery odds. Pardon me, that is vacation brain. Instead of just rewarding the worst teams in terms of giving the best odds to the team with the worst record and having to go through a lottery at all, to be honest, there's this idea that you take the moment in the calendar when each team gets eliminated from the playoffs. So the worst team would be eliminated from the playoffs early, maybe it's January or February. And one by one, the second worst team will get eliminated. And, the last day of the season, a few of those division races get sorted out and you get your playoff tree. Well, there's this idea that if you take the date at which you're eliminated from the playoffs and you start counting points towards the first overall pick, every time you win, those 2 points go into a separate standings that help you get the first overall pick. Then that worst team actually wants to. Sure, they haven't made the playoffs. Sure, they're not a very good team. But the incentive is to keep winning as much as you can because you're going to get more points and get that first overall pick. If you're a bad team, you're going to get more time to get points to work towards that first overall pick. Oh my goodness. And if you're a really good team and you just miss the playoffs on the final day, well, then you're not going to have any chance at all, really. And that seems fair to me too, where you're really incentivizing winning for everybody all the way right until the end of the season. And you're making sure that the team that actually is genuinely, sincerely the worst gets the best odds. I have a lot of fun with that idea.
Yeah. And you essentially have like a separate standings or a separate race competition, if you will, with a pretty massive prize many years in the first overall pick in the draft.
Yeah, imagine for Connor Bedard, all of those teams that are in that lottery, they're not incentivized to tank, but, they've been trying to win, or maybe they're rebuilding and they know they're going to miss the playoffs. At some point, it becomes official. They're eliminated from playoff eligibility. And from that moment on, they're still incentivized to win. They're dressing their best roster. They're giving teams a fight as much as possible. I think that's a more fun little tournament to sell or to award a player of that ilk, as opposed to just doing it in the lottery and, hey, good luck. Congratulations, Chicago. Here's your reward for being miserable.
Murat Tesh of The Athletic with us. Great comments in the chat. Appreciate everyone chiming in. A lot of support for Murat's idea. It's very innovative. Murat, as far as the latest goes, I mean, this has been a real quiet month of August. But I know you've always got your ear to the ground. Has anything changed regarding the Winnipeg Jets? Are you hearing anything, that maybe is new or intriguing? Certainly, I mean, right at the top of the list, potential trade options for the Winnipeg Jets when it comes to Scheifele or Hellebuck. Or has it been pretty much radio silence, and we're expecting this to, be talked about more when everyone gets to town, but probably this is the way this team will be, at least into camp heading into the opener?
Yeah, for me, and admittedly, from the site and from writing and right that I'm off until I guess the end of the weekend, so I haven't been reaching out to all the sorts of things, and there's plenty I'm sure that I could be missing right at this moment. That's my caveat. I think it is kind of radio silence and status quo right now. That's the sense I get. You're seeing PTOs go around. You're seeing teams make tweaks at the very edges of their roster as opposed to transformational moves. And I think that that's where to expect Winnipeg to stay for the time being. Whether they've got an opportunity to extend Hellebuck and Scheifele, short term, probably. Long term, probably not. So, in each of those situations is unique, I should say. I'm not sure that there's something happening right now that's sending that trajectory into a surprise path. I expect those guys to be arriving in town. I expect them to be at camp. I expect them to start the season with the Jets. And, we've talked about it before. It's tough to imagine a really great offer being made unless a team is surprised by injury or circumstance in the season until the trade deadline. And even then, who knows how Winnipeg's doing at that point. It's an awkward position. You want there to be resolution. You want to know what the long-term plan is. I'm sure the players and staff and everybody would feel more comfortable if they knew as well. But I'm not seeing that. So, I can say that, Winnipeg wasn't in the Sam Gagner sweepstakes, but Winnipeg's added some forwards and is particularly deep. So you wouldn't have expected that anyway. That's what I know, which isn't very much right here and today.
Well, what's interesting, you bring that up, that the players would like to know. I mean, obviously, everyone wants to have a pretty good idea about, what the plan is and how they're going about it. I think the plan for all those guys in the room is to win hockey games, just to, make the playoffs and to compete for a cup. The funny thing is that, some tough decisions potentially moving off of players that might not make you better right now, but better in the future might be good for the organization. But we've heard this before. I'm not sure how well they go over in the dressing room, because let's face it, there's not a lot of guys playing right now that'll be in that opening night lineup that really care about 2025 first round draft picks. They're worried about winning games, and they're wanting to be part of a team that, has hope, that is competing for something, as opposed to the draft lottery.
Yeah, I think it was Josh Morrissey, and I think he was talking to NHL.com. So I think it was this summer. I hope I've gotten that right. But he said something to the effect of, the off season is what it is. We understand players have their own situations, but once we get in the room, once we, get back to camp, we're just a bunch of people focused on winning. And I do get that. I do get that, once there is a roster of, 20 odd players and they're seeing each other every single day and they're working towards the same goal and all that sort of stuff. A lot of that, what happened in the offseason, goes out the window, and they're focused on the group of teammates that they have, and that those bonds form very strongly. At the same time, every now and again, if you do have a contract decision to make, and we've heard Jets players say these sorts of things before, you do consider the trajectory of the organization. So once upon a time, that was Blake Wheeler and Connor Hellebuck signing long-term extensions because they saw the Jets as a team on the way up. Wheeler said as much, and that was part of his thought process. Well, the team was on the way up. We were contending at that point, and that was a huge part of the decision. I think that plays into some of, if not, the pending free agents. Does that impact Nino Niederreiter's plans or Nemesnikov's plans 2 years from now or what have you? I'm not sure. But Cole Perfetti, his entry-level contract is up this coming summer, and if he has a healthy season, well, we're expecting a lot of points on that front. And, does that deal become a bridge? Is there long-term buy-in? Those sorts of things. And I think you have the opportunity always in Winnipeg, if you're committed to a plan that people can make sense of and looks good and players have opportunity and you can see a future that's getting progressively brighter from wherever you are at, it's probably easier to sell those types of long-term extensions to core players like Perfetti is hopefully going to be from the Jets' perspective. So that's the one that I worry about. Like, not Perfetti specifically. I think that he's happy in Winnipeg and all those sorts of things. I don't know what he's thinking about that sort of situation. But as a concept, you want players of that ilk to always want to buy in. And I think those young guys do look a little bit as to like, what does the horizon hold for this organization?
You know, Perfetti, I'm glad you brought him up because I wanted to ask you about Perfetti and, you know, his challenge, but at the same time, opportunity heading into this season. You mentioned the fact that he's finishing up the ELC. I think there's a very good chance that he gets, you know, a significant run at potentially playing center, which I know he has said he feels that might help him in a few different ways. And we've talked a lot about Neil Pionk on the back end, and if he can sort of turn his game around and get back to where he was a couple years ago, how impactful that could be. I really think that in a lot of ways, Cole Perfetti might be the linchpin to different conversations that we're having mid-season and heading into the trade deadline as to whether this team is competitive and is battling for a playoff spot and is doing well. I think he's going to have a huge part of that. And if he were to be hurt or if things weren't to go well, I think that would really, really impact. Like, I'm not sure there's one guy that has going to have more say, shall we say, in the swing of the many possibilities that the directions this team could go in than this third season for Cole Perfetti.
Yeah, and the hype that we're talking about already for Cole Perfetti, this is definitely a capture the opportunity or let it slip sort of situation for him. There's top 6 minutes available. He's presumed to be a top 6 player. He'll definitely probably grow into a top 6 excellence. This is the goal for Cole Perfetti. And there's opportunity perhaps at second line center. If he's not second line center and he's playing wing, there's even the opportunity that they staple him to Mark Scheifele's side. And if you have a first line that's Perfetti, Scheifele, and whether that's Velarde on the right, whether that's Ehlers on the right, whoever that is, there's a chance that Winnipeg's quote-unquote second line is built around Kyle Connor if he's not on the first line, or around Nikolai Ehlers if he's not on the first line. If Perfetti is a difference maker, and you can put him in any one of those positions, first or second line left wing or second line center, and he's making a difference, then it gives you so many options with those other weapons. And we've seen Kyle Connor be a force that other teams can't handle. And we've seen Nikolai Ehlers do it. And we've seen Mark Scheifele do it. You can get those guys free a little bit with more time and space away from matchups, etc. if Cole Perfetti delivers the season that ideally a healthy version of him should deliver.
If he moves to center from the wing, what do you think are what are the biggest challenges for him to do that? And what will be the determining factor in, I mean, we've heard a lot about his foot speed. I mean, you know, the ability to play that role. I think it'll be benefit him to maybe have less time in the corners to be more of a target for things that have gotten him hurt before. But as far as playing that center position against good competition night in and night out, if you're playing in that role in the top 6, what do you think the biggest challenges for Perfetti to make him successful when that opportunity arises?
Yeah, I think for me, those would be the same challenges that have sort of been the talking points for Perfetti for his whole career, and that would be size and speed. Speed in terms of foot speed to be tracking 200 feet, and speed as well in terms of his reads, because his reads being faster than everybody else is kind of his calling card. When he's got the puck on his stick offensively, he can think a few steps ahead of other players, and that opens up options for him. He's very aware of where everybody is on the ice, and it almost looks like he has more time to work with than other players do because he can think so quickly. That's a strength. I think a center's got more reads to make, both ends of the ice, defensively especially. And so I think what you would see is a little bit of a learning curve, as suddenly he doesn't look like he can think faster than everybody because he's got more to process. The computer has more to deal with. And then as he progresses, I think that he would catch up and begin to excel again, making those reads quickly, making the right outlets, being an outlet to start that breakout, all those other sorts of things, his coverage. I think that he has the hockey sense to do all of those things well, but there'd be a transition to doing all those things well and making those reads at NHL pace consistently before he surpasses that and then excels. The foot speed thing I wonder about, Because, I mean, the first forward back is going to take the down low defensive responsibilities anyhow. So if you have, I'm going to say Nito Niederreiter is somebody who I'm going to trust in a two-way sort of role, and he's busting back, and he's F1, he's in the zone, he's covering off down low, he's helping the D out, he's the first outlet, or he's got somebody in front. Well, then, Perfetti can sort of take that winger's job until there's a switch opportunity. And I think there are ways to mitigate that. It might also mitigate against if you're worried about him handling like a 6'4" center in the slot or something like that playing D. So I think systemically there are ways to sort of mitigate some of those weaknesses as long as he's making the right reads. I think success at center is accessible to Cole Perfetti, but you'd see a learning curve on his way to it.
Murat, best case scenario for the Winnipeg Jets, in my opinion, regardless of what happens with Scheifele's future and Hellebuck, and really this season overall as a team, is Cole Perfetti having a heck of a season, establishing himself as a real long-term center option for the Winnipeg Jets in the top 6. And at the end of this season, inking him to a deal that is going to keep him as a key part of this club for the foreseeable future. Because next season, there is the potential that there could be an influx of youth unlike anything that we've seen before at the NHL level. And again, this is maybe a stretch to think all of these players will be in the NHL. But you've got Rucker McGroarty, Colby Barlow, Brad Lambert, Chaz Lucius, potentially even Elias Salmonson. And I got thinking about Jets 1.0 and that 92-93 team that had Solani as a rookie, had Tkachuk as a rookie, and had Alex Zhamnov as a rookie. And all of those players at times actually played together. Now, granted, Timo was older. I mean, he wasn't coming in as a 19-year-old. He was 22 years old, I think, by the time that he was there. Zhamnov and, Tkachuk a little bit younger, but still not 18 or 19. But you get thinking about, like, how fun that season was, and that was pretty magical. But it's very different now, I would say, in the National Hockey League, especially for younger players. I mean, let's just kick the can. Like, we're not even talking about this season right now, but a season from now, we'll see what the roster, the makeup of the club is. But, I mean, these are cornerstone pieces, hopefully, for the future for Winnipeg. What would you make of having that much youth come in and potentially be on the roster teammates all at the same time, both from a hockey standpoint, but also what it might do to those windows, if you will, contractually, when potentially all of them could be coming up to be re-upped at the same time?
I mean, it's an exciting thought. And if performance and ability dictates it, like, that would be one of the greatest scenarios Winnipeg could have to deal with. It would mean that all these guys hit. It would mean all these guys were showing the NHL ability that they believed could be attained when they were drafted. And I think that would be a phenomenal story. I also think, and maybe this is off-season thinking, maybe this is because last time I was in a dressing room, it was for rookie camp earlier this year. But if you're Winnipeg and, from here and today, they've got transition to worry about. Wheeler is out, Dubois is out, Scheifele and Hellebuck, we'll see. You're looking at that next window and that next era of greatness, and you're thinking, okay, well, what are our strengths? And this is a tight-knit organization. That's a strength. We've drafted reasonably well. We haven't had a ton of picks, so it's not like we're stacked in that way, but we've made some good draft picks. That's a strength. You could point to Morrissey or Connor or Ehlers or whoever you like, Hellebuck if he stays, and you assess some things. Well, probably the character of that next wave of players and the character of the under 23 guys, you could put Perfetti into that mix too, is one of the things that you would really value. And if they're all showing you that they can play in the NHL, and you want a culture change in Winnipeg, and you want it to be a place that seems fun, seems like engaging, seems like everybody's having a blast all the time, well, then maybe that energy is what you want. And you could have Josh Morrissey and Adam Lowry leading the charge from the veteran perspective, but maybe a little bit of hype, committing even harder to a youth movement than otherwise, could make the club more exciting to that 25 and under talent that's going to be coming up even in the third wave after that. The guys are going to be drafting this next year and all of that sort of stuff. If you can look ahead at those guys and say Winnipeg treated treated their young players so unbelievably well. And look how much fun they had, and look at all this crazy media they did and all the different things that they ran with because of the personality and character they had. Maybe that's an incentive to buy in as well for the next wave.
Murat is with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Those are going to be fun conversations to have. And I think those will be fun young guys to have, on the team, in the community, out at the Fan Fest at the beginning of the season. But as they say, there's so many interesting questions about this team for this year. And someone asked me today or yesterday, we were out and said, so where do you think the Jets will be at New Year's this season? And I said, the range of possibilities stretch pretty much everywhere from about 5th in the league to 30th. And there's paths to go all of that different way. And I mean, I don't know if one thing's more likely than the other, probably somewhere in the middle of that. But we've got lots of questions. The answers will start coming when we get to the regular season in October 11th in Calgary. Before we go, Murat, we often talk about player value, contracts, and all that. I did want to ask you what you thought about the Austin Matthews extension that made him the highest paid player in the league. I don't think anyone was so surprised about that he was getting into the 13s, but also the term. What did you think about it? And is it a win? Is it a win-win? Does it make sense for both teams? I mean, just thoughts on that, because that is going to be sort of a benchmark now for a few other deals in the next couple of years.
I think so. And just refresh me. Was it 4 years? Do I have that right, Huss?
I think it was 5.
5. Okay. I remember it wasn't max term, and that's just the sort of thing that stuck in my mind. I think the first thing I think about in these situations is cap hit percentage as opposed to raw cap hit.
Oh, sorry. It is a 4-year extension. He's got the 1 more year plus 4. So they've got him for the next 5 seasons, but 1 was on his previous deal.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Just the idea that his prime years will be spent in Toronto must make that market happy. The fact that he gets out of it maybe a little bit earlier, it's not a max term deal, means that if he's performing at the level that you expect of a player of that ilk, we talk about aging curves, but the very best players in the league, they tend to age a little bit better. They tend to stay productive a little bit longer and make it into the league a little bit earlier as well. So like their careers are long. I expect him to be extremely productive when that deal comes out. So he has an opportunity to get paid all over again. The team has an opportunity to look at that again. I think that's fine. I think the biggest thing I have is I see some people sometimes is like, oh my goodness, you can't win. And certainly the Maple Leafs haven't won, which I'm sure makes Jets fans happy. You can't win with a player making that much money. But in terms of cap hit percentage, we've seen contracts like this before. It's not incredible. It's not wild. And if you think of the value that players produce for the dollars that they make, usually the teams that struggle are the ones who pay the middle tier guys too much. If he's producing like Austin Matthews produces, I think that's a fair value deal for him as well. So yeah, I think it's a fine deal. Probably the biggest thing is what you said at the end there, and I'm just realizing it now, and you're right on the money. He's going to influence what everybody remotely close to the upper echelon asks for and wants over the next little while. And I think that the NHL is turning from a league where you sign long term and you try to stay. The one team thing is almost dead now, but players signing huge deals at 30 that go forever. Or huge deals at 25 that go forever, 8 years, 7 years. And now these 4 or 5 year deals, trying to hit free agency as many times as possible in your 20s while you're still in your prime and producing massive point totals. I think that's probably the movement that has already begun in the NHL. And then this is just another huge step in that, which is a huge change from how we grew up, where you had to wait till you were 32 and then players would finally get those massive deals.
Yeah, you can rest assured he'll be asking for 8 on the next contract, because that's the one that's going to take him past 35. And be nice to get that sort of run the entire time. Murat, thanks so much for doing this, especially during your time off. We're all looking forward to you getting back to writing for all of us in The Athletic next week. And in the meantime, all the best to your mom and the family. Have a great few days, a great long weekend. And We'll talk to you next week, and when we're 1 week closer to Jets training camp getting going here in the Peg.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, yes.
Appreciate it. There is Murat Atesh. Great chat with Murat as always, and really appreciate him still making time for us, even though he's on a little bit of time off with the Athletic. All right, looking forward to talking to Rewucki. Probably get away. We will talk a little hockey. I'm very interested to hear his thoughts on these new rules that the Champions League is getting into. I want to get into a little CFL and NFL talk with him. We will talk Bombers. And of course, all of our Bomber reports brought to you by our friends at Princess Auto, where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new, you're going to find over at Princess Auto. Pop by and see them in store, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, 2 locations in Winnipeg, or shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Well, we do have another great-looking weekend, one more long weekend, and, it has been such a great summer. I know Consolidated Supply has been doing so many different things for both individuals, residences, and companies in Manitoba. Still time to get down and talk to the leaders in irrigation systems, artificial turf, golf carts, both new and used, is the exclusive club car dealer in Manitoba. Saw that new fleet at Breezy the other day. Looking great, guys. Not to mention Consolidated Supply has other great options for your property, including hot tubs and amazing outdoor kitchens. And of course, they're the leaders in small engine parts and repair. So much that Consolidated Supply can do for you. Get on down, check them out at their showroom, open to the public, 1395 Niagara Road East, or find out more online at their website at cte.ca. As we were just talking with Murat, hockey season is just around the corner. And if you've got a hockey player in your family that's getting ready for the season, there's only one stop you need to make to get ready to drop the puck, and that is Royal Sports, the leader in hockey equipment gear, with expert hockey players working at the shop to get you the best fit and the best choice. It's all there at Royal Sports. Family owned, is the hockey superstore in town for 40 years. While you're at it, you can get into your exclusive Bomber gear just in time for Labor Day and the Banjo Bowl. And of course, tons of NFL merch coming in by the day, as we are 1 week away from NFL kickoff. Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. And you can follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina. Well, for those of you that aren't going out to Regina to enjoy the game between the Bombers and Riders, your next best place to get together with the gang, of course, is your local Boston Pizza. You know, all the BPs in town will have the game on all their big screens, big sound on their expert speakers. And maybe the best part about that game day experience is the food. Ice cold schooners, world famous BP wings, gourmet pizzas, all the latest from the BP feature menu. It is all there. And whether it's tonight or for game day, staying in, order online at bostonpizza.com. All right, let's keep this show rolling. By the way, let's get some more thumbs up, folks. Great to see a big crowd today in. And everyone knew that Brandon Rewucki was coming on today. Let's bring Rew in and get ready for this weekend, get ready for NFL season and all in all. What's going on, my man? How are you? How's the home status going on? Junior doing a good job at growing, or is it a little maniac at this point in their young life?
It's maniacal over here. So yeah, it's all good though. Right now I can hear a little bit of noise, but nothing too crazy. No yelling, no screaming. So that's a W. And anytime the volume's at like a 4, that's okay.
What's the longest stretch you have slept uninterrupted in the past month?
when I went to Denver for a work trip.
Just glorious, I'll bet.
Well, although the worst part was I went there and I slept not bad the first night. The next 2 nights, they have fake fire alarms go off in the middle of the night each night. And so I get woke. So I can't even I can't even say vacation because it was just work. But like even when I'm away, with the opportunity to get like even 6 or 7 straight would have been glorious. I couldn't even pull that off. But earlier this week, the little one actually had a pretty solid sleep. So I got Yeah, uninterrupted, maybe not uninterrupted, but like there was a good like 7-ish hours, which is like a major win.
Yeah, that is a major win. Hey, listen, I want to get to a little Bomber talk with you. I want to get to the NFL season, but just talking about this with Murat. I'm not sure if you've seen this. Champions Hockey League's getting going over in Europe right now. New format this year under the IIHF. Very cool and something. I mean, we don't have enough leagues or anything to really make that make sense here in North America. But what is key and what I think a lot of people are talking about today is some rules that they've instituted. Minor penalties served in full. Score a power play goal, the guy doesn't come out of the box. Same thing for a delayed penalty. If you're getting a penalty and the team scores, you're still going in and serving the 2 minutes. And maybe the most interesting one of them all, if you score shorthanded, the minor penalty is over. What do you think at first glance on these innovations that they're going to be trying out this year?
I love all of them. I don't think it's going to be all that long till, well, I should say, maybe I shouldn't say that because the NHL is hesitant to do anything that might bring a little extra excitement to the game, right? But
I'll tell
I
you what,
love it. I
just
think
on
it's
that,
great.
just on that, there is one reason. Well, there's two reasons why this is not coming to the NHL anytime soon. One is Connor McDavid, and the other is Leon Draisaitl. I mean, the Oiler power play is already historically good. And, I mean, if you're just giving them the full 2 minutes every time they score, like it would be huge for Edmonton. But I can tell you right now, the rest of the general managers and the board of governors are saying hell no to that until those guys are long gone or playing on other teams, because how that might tip the balance. But I mean, just as far as the rules go, though, this is something that's been talked about for a while, though I've never heard the shorthanded goal innovation, which is also pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because this rule was initially put in place because the Montreal Canadian power play was too dominant. Like back, it might have been the 70s, but for sure, like the 60s, it was too dominant. And they were scoring too many times on the power play, so they put the rule in. So it would be ironic that the Oilers then have the next best power play of all time, and the rule gets reinstated so that they can then abuse it the way Montreal did back in the day. That might be my favorite part of all the different rules, though, is you scored a shorty and the power play is over. Like that, I mean, you want to talk about momentum boosts and things like that. That would bring an electric atmosphere to the penalty kill. It would be the power kill at that point, legitimately. So I'm all down for that. The only one I didn't like was, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Huss, but I think they said that they wanted to allow icing or no, remove icing on the penalty kill, right? Like if you dumped it on the PK, that's still icing as it would be 5-on-5.
That I'm not sure whether that's part of this IIHF. I was just reading kind of what Gord Miller had tweeted out, and I didn't see mention of the icing, but that has been absolutely something that has been speculated as a way to maybe create more offense and, not allow penalty killing teams just to ice the puck, like has been the norm in the NHL for a long time.
Yeah, that's a dumb idea. That would be stupid. I would like absolutely zero on that one because people say like, oh, they won't ice it, like they don't want to take a face. Yes, teams will do that. They absolutely will do that. They'll take their chances with a face-off as opposed to potentially turning the puck over inside their own zone. So if you love 8 whistles in the span of 2 minutes, then that would be a great rule. Other than that, though, sign me up for every other little bit of that because I mean, all you're doing is rewarding goal scoring in some capacity, either for the power play team or for the penalty kill team. If I only had to pick one rule, Huss, give me the shorty to end the power play. Like I love that aspect of, maybe potentially putting more emphasis and more risk on the shorthanded team to try and get a shorty, and it would just add, I think, a big time layer of excitement to the game.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm just thinking out loud here when I talked about this with Murat. I mean, do coaches structure their power plays a little bit different? Do they utilize some different personnel, some guys that might not be as good killing the penalty, but have a way higher upside if they can get a little bit of open space and go in and score goals? Here's a great suggestion in chat from Spency. The Blades of Steel rule, only the guy that loses the fight gets a penalty. Remember that from Blades of Steel back in the day? Lose the fight, you get in. Wow, what that would do to the rosters of the National Hockey League, we can only imagine. Let's talk a little football. Big weekend in the Canadian Football League. Bombers going back to Regina. They have owned the Riders for the last few years. Nothing they love more than coming back from Regina with a big win and then doing it again in the Banjo Bowl. This team's looking real good right now, while other teams like the BC Lions seem to be regressing to the mean. What's your call, and what are your thoughts on this big football game on Sunday afternoon between the Prairie rivals?
I mean, my prediction would be, and I always hate to do this because I don't like to get ahead of myself, but my prediction would be Clubber Lang in Rocky 3, and my prediction is pain. I think the Blue Bombers just deliver an absolute number 2 kicking, and it's pain all late afternoon in Regina. I mean, for the Bombers, it's not even necessary. Like, there's a big part of this that's all about home field advantage come playoff time. And you mentioned BC's little dip over this last little bit here. I mean, if you can go 2-0 in the LDC and the Banjo Bowl back to back, and I mean, if BC drops a little bit more ground here, you can almost put it to bed. The race for first. Not only the bye, but maybe the chance to rest up some bodies near the end of the regular season. So, I mean, it's a massive game, regardless what the record is, but just the fact that the Bombers can start to put a little bit of big-time distance between them and BC, I think adds a little more extra to it. But, I mean, we've seen both these teams play all season long. And I know throw the record out the window every time rivals play and things like that, but I just think there's a big gap between these two clubs here. And I think the Bombers' biggest worry so far this season is when they don't come ready to play, knowing how good they are. I don't think that applies to playoff games and big games like this. So I think the Blue are going to be ready to go right off the bat.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, we have seen, a couple. I mean, listen, they didn't start very well at all against the winless Elks, and we're down 22-0. And then we all know what happened in that game. And, even still the Elks game here was like 6-6 or whatever at halftime. I have no doubt whatsoever that this team will be ready to go right from the get-go. And here's the thing. And listen, Saskatchewan has 5 wins. So, you got to give them credit. It's about winning, and they've got them in. I've been very unimpressed with Saskatchewan for the most. I mean, think of the way that they've won some of those games. For instance, against Edmonton earlier on this year. But I will say one thing, Brandon. When they were maybe at their best and arguably played their best game, Trevor Harris threw for 400 yards against the Blue Bombers earlier this season. They still lost at home by 18. Yeah. So, I mean, the amount of things I think that would have to go in the Riders' way to get one, I think it is a very, very tall task. That being said, there is something about, or I mentioned this yesterday. I mean, 2011, we were all down there. We did an H&L bus. Bombers were 7-1. The Riders were 1-7. Let's just say there was a lot of strutting going on heading into the game. 2 weeks later, the Bombers were 7-3 and the Riders were 3-7. So yeah, that is why they play the games. And Labor Day, maybe more than any, is a time where anything can happen. I just don't see the Bombers allowing that to happen.
I agree. I agree. I mean, it's different teams, different coaching staff, things like. I mean, the other part of it too, and maybe why I'm so confident is some of these closer Labor Day games that the Bombers have been in with the Riders. I know it's different players, but there was no composure on the Saskatchewan side of things, and that's a direct result on coaching. The majority of the coaching staff is still there. I mean, there's that aspect of it too. I mean, Saskatchewan just they have to play flawlessly. And the Bombers have to bring a subpar effort, I think, at least for them to come out of there without a win. So I'll take the extremely high floor that the Bombers offer, as opposed to maybe a 1 in 20 chance that the Riders are able to pull something off.
Here's one other thing that's bad news for Saskatchewan. Zach Caleros already owns them, and if you heard Zach talk yesterday after practice, he is still very pissed off at himself for those 2 pick sixes in those last games. And he said he might be pissed off all the way into the offseason right now. a focused and angry Zach Caleros that's going out to prove something, I think is just more bad news for the home team on Sunday afternoon.
I mean, the only way that could have been better if he said, I'm going to be pissed off all the way through the parade. Like, it's going to bother me all off season long. So should have thrown that in there, but I get why he didn't.
We'll see what's up. The Argos are looking good. I can't wait for that game on the 29th. And well, let's face it, hopefully those two teams will be playing again in a Grey Cup rematch in Hamilton coming up in November. Listen, I know that as a new father, or one that doubled down on your young family, there's one thing that often really takes a beating when you get into your situation, and that is fantasy football management. What is your what is your situation? Have you had to dial down the fantasy football, or is that something that you wouldn't even consider, and you're doing your best right now to get through draft season, juggling that and 2 young children?
That's just part of the package. It's not going anywhere. We did the big draft last night. I won't bore anybody with my picks or anything like that, but I will say that my older brother just created a lifelong rival with his actions in the draft last night. And if I like the next time I see him, it's on. It's on. I'm gonna I'm
what do you guess? You went all in on the Cowboys or what?
Oh no, that would have been great. Like that would have helped. That would have helped us out tremendously. But no, he was a snake. He acted like a snake, right? Like he said nice things to your face, and then he stabs you in the back. So hopefully he's listening. But I'm gonna scratch the hell out of him the next time I see. Like it's. I couldn't sleep. I was so livid, Huss. I could not sleep last night. I don't get to sleep anyways, but I just laid fuming in bed.
Even when you're able to sleep.
He turned into Freight over Wiki. Like you don't go against the family. He went against the family. So
is it redraft league, or did you have some keepers and stuff?
No, just full on redraft. We do a redraft? Salary cap, like auction,
Where did you pick? Oh, you did an auction. Okay, yeah. Perfect. Love auction. As I said, it's a little bit more into it, but I don't know anyone that's ever gone to an auction that went back to the snake draft. Everyone can get their guys. So this is perfect. And I know there's some people that are interested in thoughts, want to know who I was, going after in the first round. Where'd you spend your money? Like, who were the guys that you sort of targeted? And although it sounds like there may have been an issue with certain family members when it came down to the auction, who are the guys that you had to have? There's always my guys. Who are your guys this year?
So my guys, I had two big guys. I always want to get, like, I think it's called anchoring, where you get like a stud running back, a stud receiver, then you try to build the rest of your team out. So I wanted to get either Nick Chubb or Bijan Robinson. The Bijan betting went completely through the roof, so I ended up with Nick Chubb at a pretty good price. I think he's going to lead the league in rushing this year, and he's going to catch a bunch of passes too. So I was happy to get him. And then the receiver that I want, I would have gladly taken a Jefferson or a Chase or some of those guys, but I really wanted Garrett Wilson because I think he's going to have a special season. He was damn good last year with the worst quarterbacking in the NFL behind him as a rookie. So I'm expecting big things out of him. So I was happy to pick up Garrett Wilson and Jalen Waddle at reasonable prices so I could kind of fill out the rest of my roster.
There's a couple of receivers that are going a little later on than, your Jeffersons, your Chase. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to have another.
That was my other guy. That was the sun god. Yep.
To me, he is right there. And the other guy that maybe will cost a little bit less that I think he could lead the league in receiving is Chris Olave in New Orleans. Second year, now they've got Derek Carr there. And Carr can throw and will be throwing quite a bit. And then you add in that division that they're currently residing in with Atlanta, Tampa, and Carolina all potentially being, some of the weaker teams in the league. I think there's if you're able to get your hands on him, he is a guy that I think is going to be a massive difference maker. And I'm already looking at some props to get in before kickoff next year, because I think both of those guys, Olave and Amon-Ra St. Brown, way down when it comes to prop bets on the top receiving yardage gainers for the NFL this season. And I think I'm going to get a little touch on both of those guys.
Yeah, Amon-Ra was the other guy I really wanted. Pricing just didn't work out though, but like he got tackled like 6 or 7 times within the 5-yard line last year, right? Like, and so with just a little bit better luck last year, he would have ended up with like 10 plus TDs, and then half the Lions receiving core is suspended for gambling, so he's gonna get a bunch of targets early on in the season. I mean, look, you can if your strategy at receiver is to draft former Ohio State wideouts, you're probably going to end up with a pretty damn good team.
No doubt. You know what? Speaking of that Amon-Ra, I was looking at the Cool Bet lines when we were doing our passing prop show or receiving prop show with Dusty the other day, and St. Brown, his total for touchdowns is 5.5. Like you mentioned how often he got tackled inside the 5. I think he had 4 or 5 on the year. I mean, to me, that is the most no-brainer over bet maybe of the entire future offerings. The only way I can see that doesn't happen is if he gets hurt.
Yeah, and no Jamal Williams to the TD vulture, right? So I'm with you on that one. I like the Lions a lot this year. I mean, any decent team in the NFC is probably going to put up a decent amount of points. It is, I mean, I don't feel bad for you as a Chiefs fan, but I feel bad for any other team in the AFC. The AFC is nuts. It is insane. It's just going to be a gauntlet week in, week out. The NFC, man, the NFC stinks outside of like two or three good teams. But I mean, the 10th best team in the AFC might be battling for a division title over there in the NFC.
It's funny if it was an even schedule and it was just 32 teams in the league and the top 12 made the playoffs or the top 14, I'd say 9 or 10 of those teams are coming out of the AFC. I mean, that is, and again, what we think we know going into week 1 often is not the case after 2 weeks going, what the hell were we thinking? That's why I always try and go light as hard as it is when we're wagering on the first week of the season. But let's talk about a couple of the divisions. Well, first off, your Birds. Like, I always have fun. I'm sort of a Stephen A guy. I love laughing at the Cowboys and giving it to them at all spots. They do have a lot of talent, but they always have a lot of talent. And, well, we know what happens. How confident are you that it'll be Philly and then everyone else in the NFC East?
Pretty confident. I say unconfidently. The only thing, like, so many things went right for the Eagles last year that there's like I think all of like Eagles Nation is basically like awaiting something catastrophic because, you know, they got a ton of great bounces, no real major injuries, things like that. But I mean, I think Philly's the class of the NFC. I think Dallas is good. Just think Philly's pretty much slightly better at almost every position, and then I think a big time coaching gap between the two teams. So, I mean, I think the Cowboys are probably the 3rd best team in the NFC, and they like their problem is in the regular season. Like they're like the Leafs, right? Like they're gonna win a lot of games. They're just gonna choke in the playoffs. So I mean that part of it's great, but I think Dallas is gonna have a good season. I don't know about Washington and the Giants. It's tough to get a read on them, but I mean, I don't know if I could put a lot of trust in either Sam Howell or Daniel Jones, even though I think Daboll's a great coach. I think they'll both be in and around like 7 or 8 wins, but I'm just not expecting a whole lot out of the other two teams there. But it's funny because that makes it automatically the best division in the NFC. Just the fact that all 4 teams are going to be competitive this year.
Yeah, I mean, man, I saw the most hilarious quote from Ron Rivera that frankly is negligent and borderline malpractice. But he was watching Sam Howell in practice, and I don't know whether he had just never paid attention to the guy or what, but he went in and played that last game and then said, man, if I knew he was this good, we would have played him a long time ago. Remember they started Carson Wentz in the game they had to win to stay in the playoff race? I mean, I don't know how you admit that publicly. That being said, I think this Howell guy is going to be he's going to kind of be an off the radar guy, and that is a team that could surprise. I went through the Atlanta Falcons schedule. It might be the weakest schedule in the history of the National Football League with their divisional games and the other teams that they're playing. Like, I didn't really think that they were going to be great. And then I went down their schedule, and now I'm thinking, like, this team's making the playoffs. And that's even if you give the Saints the division, because I still think that they are that best team. But I'll tell you what, from a fantasy standpoint, that's going to be fun. I mean, if this Desmond Ridder can even be average, I mean, you bring in, you've got Kyle Pitts, you've got London, and now this Bijan Robinson. I mean, there's going to be a lot of weapons there for him. And I think that Falcons team's actually going to be pretty fun to watch.
They're going to be fun to watch. Yeah, I mean, they might be the Minnesota Vikings of the Adrian Peterson era, to be honest with you, where you got the best running back in the league. It's not going to be too long before he is the best running back in the league. But, I'm just not anywhere near the Desmond Ridder hype. I don't know if other people are, but, I mean, look at the facts. How many third-round quarterbacks have major success at the NFL level, let alone in their first season as a third-round pick at the NFL level? So they probably do have an easy schedule, but I will say that other teams on that schedule are probably looking at the Falcons going, that's a winnable game for us. So New Orleans is the only team I think that I think instills a ton of fear into you. And I was kind of surprised. Like, they're pretty high up on the the over-under win totals. But you're right. Like, the division stinks. The NFC stinks. They've just got a good team, and that might be enough for like 10, 11 wins for them this year. But I love everything about Bijan Robinson, but I'm not going to jump on the Atlanta Falcons wagon anytime soon.
Yeah, where's the Saints? Yeah, the Saints 9.5 is their win total. It's plus 105 to take the over. And I did notice that the Cardinals line has dropped from 4.5 to 3.5. And you know what? Sign me up for the under 3.5.
I was going to say
could be historically bad. And you get out there and search for some alternate lines and see what you can get for under 2.5 wins. I don't know where one win is, but if they win 2, congratulations. I don't think they're winning 3 this year. And I do think that we may as well just put them on the clock right now.
Do you want to take? Do you want a Cardinals take, Huss?
Yeah, please do. Of course,
I don't think Jonathan Gannon lasts the season.
Really? Just like he won't be. They'll realize that they they got hoodwinked.
Fraud. Just major Nathaniel Hackett vibes just ringing, and he hasn't even coached a regular season game yet. It's funny because he was the DC for the Eagles, and they either set the NFL sack record or came pretty damn close to it. And the entire state of Pennsylvania, basically with like pitchforks and torches, carried him over to Arizona the second that the Super Bowl ended. I just zero confidence in him as a DC, let alone as a head coach. I just think the guy's a total goof, total fraud. And I'm with you on the under 3.5 for the Cardinals.
Well, keep in mind what they're trying to do. They're trying to lose a lot and get on top of that draft board right now. So maybe they found their guy, the guy that can get that job done. Last one for you. AFC East. You mentioned the Jets, Garrett Wilson, Aaron Rodgers is there. The Miami Dolphins have a ton of talent on their squad, and the Bills are still the Bills until someone knocks them off. What do you make of that division? And I can't forget the Patriots, even though certainly on paper they look to be a distant fourth in the division.
It's a good division. It's really the Patriots aren't a great team, but if that's your division's worst team, and they're just always a tough out. I think that if there's different categories of teams, the Pats are a tough out week in, week out. I mean, I have major questions about their O-line, and that's usually a recipe for failure at the pro football level. But I just like everything else about the New York Jets, man. The fact that they almost made the playoffs with Zach Wilson quarterbacking the team for 90% of the season, I just think decent quarterbacking gets them 11, 12 wins. So I'm a full-on Jet believer. I think Breece Hall, if he comes back healthy, is going to be one of the best running backs in the game. I love Garrett Wilson. I mean the defense is amazing. I think the Jets and the Bills go toe to toe. I love the Dolphins, but man, how can you bank on a team when Tua's one rough hit away from calling it a career. Like if I knew he was going to be healthy all year, then I think the Dolphins are right there with him. But that I just and Mike White's, he's not the worst backup in the world, but that's the only reason that's pushing me back from the Dolphins a little bit there. But I do like the Jets and the Bills to finish amongst the top in the AFC once the season's done.
Well, this is going to be a fun long weekend. We'll get into the annual Bomber Rider game next week, NFL kickoff, and in a couple weeks we'll actually probably have some legitimate Jets news to talk about here, and of course over on Skates and Plates. Rewucki, back to your growing family. I know you've got lots on your hands. It's great to talk to you as always, man. Have an awesome long weekend, and let's do this again soon. Good luck in fantasy this year. Fun segment.
Thank you. Thanks, man. Yeah, have a great long weekend as well, everybody. And get the stretchy pants out. Burger week starting, so let's have a good one out there too, right? Help out anybody in the local culinary scene.
Is there going to be any special Burger Week programming along on the plate side of Skates and Plates?
If anybody wants me to eat multiple burgers live on as gross as that might be, send them my way. I'm not going to stop anybody. We'll do a little power rankings once I get into it after a week or so for sure.
Well, you know what? Text me if you want to tag team any of these spots. I'm certainly down, and we're in the same neighborhood. We should maybe go on a little bit of a tour one night and have some fun, crank out some content.
Sounds good, man. Love it. Have a great long weekend.
Right on. We'll talk to you next week. There's Brandon Rewucki. Subscribe to Skates and Plates wherever you get your favorite pods, and of course, he joins us on a weekly basis here on WST. Real fun segment there. Yeah, NFL next week. Huge CFL weekend, and hockey season just around the corner. I know I mentioned this a little earlier, but if you popped in late, gang, we are down to just a few tickets remaining for the sports trivia night at Little Brown Jug. William Avenue, the brewery and tap room in that beautiful patio is going to be hosting it, is on September 13th. So get into the description of this YouTube video, or if you're listening on the podcast, go to winnipegsportstalk.com and get one of the last few tickets, and we'll see you there on the 13th. In the meantime, with Labor Day weekend here, maybe you're heading to Saskatchewan to rep the blue and gold. Grab your Little Brown Jug beers here so you can drink Manitoba's finest even when you're in Saskatchewan. Of course, you can find Little Brown Jug wherever they sell great beer, and at the brewery and tap room over on William Avenue. A big shout out to our friends at Aitken's Lake Wilderness Lodge, finishing up another great season. Aitken's and the Aitken's experience is waiting for you in 2024. What you do need to do, though, is get on over to aikenslake.com and find out about availability for the 2024 season, and then start counting down the days to your best days of the year when you're out at Aitken's Lake. As I said, we've got not much going on the PGA Tour side of things when it comes to golf. There will be a bunch of rounds played this weekend. Cannot wait to check out Breezy Bend and those beautiful new 7th and 15th holes. And we got some good golf weather. 34 might be a bit hot, but as I say, it could be a lot worse right now. But if you want to make Breezy Bend your home next year at Winnipeg, one of Winnipeg's top private clubs, get a hold of our pal Corey Johnson, or go to breezybend.ca and get on the waiting list for 2024 as Breezy continues to have a packed membership with so many good times on and off the golf course over at Breezy Bend. And well, a shout out to the Gold Eyes. Our pals down at Shaw Park have completed their home portion of the schedule. They've got an off day today and then finished the final series in Fargo this weekend. And unfortunately, we're officially bounced from the playoffs last night. Be a longer off season than the Fish would like, but great turnout from the fans all year long. Just great experiences and great evenings at the ballpark, pretty much from start to finish of the year. And I know Andrew and the gang will be working on an even better squad next year. Get to goldeyes.com for all the latest on the end of the season and everything going on into next year for our friends, the Winnipeg Gold Eyes. No Assiniboine Downs tonight because, of course, it's Thursday, but a big, big weekend of racing. And, of course, it starts on the Monday of the long weekend. So while we won't be on Monday, Assiniboia Downs will be a great way to finish up the long weekend with the Ponies down at the track on the west side of the city. Of course, you can find out more, make a reservation for the dining room at assiniboiadowns.com or 885-3330. All right, let's get to the cool bet lines before we finish up today on a very, very light day in the majors. Yankees and Tigers are playing right now, and then only 3 games tonight. Marlins and Nationals, Giants and Padres, and the Braves and Dodgers later on tonight. That will be worthwhile watching. 2 of the top teams in the major leagues going head-to-head out on the West Coast. As far as the CFL goes, check out today's Lock Shop if you want our picks for all of these games, as well as our partner parlay, which should be up soon. BC, 4-point favorites in Montreal. Bombers, 7.5-point favorites in Saskatchewan. That same 7.5 numbers where things have settled for the Argos being the favorites in Hamilton on Labor Day. And it was 5.5. It's now 4.5. The Calgary Stampeders favored over the Edmonton Elks. And it's not quite up yet, but check a little later on our partner parlay for the weekend, which we'll get a nice little boost on. It's going to be Bombers -7.5. Argos -7.5. I was back and forth on that, but we let Dusty's pick stand. And we both like the Elks to keep this one closer, maybe even win against Calgary, +4.5. That'll be up in the Cool Bet exclusives a little later on. And, we just talked about a bunch of future options and bets with Brandon when we were going through the NFL. I don't have enough time to go through it all. We do have some Lock Shop content on our favorite picks when it comes to props, but it is all there. You want to have some fun, go through it. Conference winners, divisions, scoring, league leaders, the awards. Will there be a winless regular season, an unbeaten regular season? Super Bowl numbers, I'd like to see. Chiefs are the favorite, +630. Eagles, 8-1. Bills and Niners, 9-1. Bengals, 11-1. Shout out Winnipeg Walter. And then 15-1 for the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Jets. These are Super Bowl odds to win the whole thing. Ravens 18-1, Dolphins 22, and the Chargers 25. And I'm loving Kabilis. I know you're watching. Lock of the year, Arizona Cardinals, most losses in the regular season, +230. Lock that one in. It's all there at Cool Bet right now. And again, our Lock Shop content will be up, and Lock Shop content moving. I think we might, hopefully at some point, bring the live episodes of the Lock Shop to Winnipeg Sports Talk as well. We're going to be doing that with Edmonton Sports Talk and Dusty and the guys who, of course, are launching their channel and show coming up next week. It's going to do it for us today. Really fun show. Obviously, had a great time chopping it up with Joey Slats at the start of the show. Great to have IC Drew back on the show. Always fun with Murat and chop it up, doing a little bit of football and NFL talk with my guy, Brandon Rewucki. It has been a fun one. Thanks to everyone that popped out. Hit that thumbs up on your way out. And if you haven't already, make sure you've hit that red subscribe button on YouTube. Podcast listeners, thanks so much for making us a part of your day. Pop by sometime when you have a chance. Jump on the YouTube channel and give us a subscribe there, a sub there as well. Tomorrow on the program, I know people were asking, the Ren Dog returns. Sean Reynolds, Rennie of K&R fame, will be joining us. We will also have Hacksaw Lee Hamilton with the NFL Notebook. Probably getting Billick on as well. Maybe a little bit of more NFL talk. We'll get ready for the Bombers in the Banjo Bowl, or the Labor Day Classic, I should say, and get ready for what should be a smoking hot long weekend in and around Winnipeg. Huge thanks to our guy Jeremy, doing a hell of a job getting us on and off the air while Remo's away. Jeremy will join us one more day tomorrow to finish off the week here on WST. Folks, have a great night. Thanks for being with us. Thanks to all the sponsors that make the show happen every day. And we'll see you tomorrow at 1 to get ready for the weekend on WST.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.